Unexpected shelter. The sky darkened without warning as Naomi Reed hurried down the bustling street, her portfolio case clutched tightly against her chest. The first fat raindrops splattered against the pavement just as she spotted a small cafe, nestled between two imposing corporate buildings. Bittersweet Brews, read the hand-painted sign swinging gently in the rising wind. Perfect timing, a deep voice called as she pushed through the door, the little bell announcing her breathless arrival. You just beat the downpour. Naomi brushed droplets from her curly auburn hair and smiled gratefully at the man behind the counter. He was tall, with warm brown eyes and an unexpected dimple that appeared when he returned her smile. Thanks for the sanctuary, she said, settling into a worn leather armchair by the window. Rain now lashed against the glass, transforming the street outside into a blurry watercolor. I'll have whatever's warm and chocolatey, please. One house special, mocha coming up, he replied, his hands moving with practiced efficiency among the gleaming equipment. I'm Julian, by the way. First time here? Naomi. And yes, though I'm not sure how I've missed this place before. She glanced around, taking in the mismatched furniture and walls lined with local artwork. It has character. Julian placed a steaming mug before her. That's the nicest way anyone's described my decorating chaos. What's in the case, if you don't mind me asking? Naomi hesitated before unzipping her portfolio. My work. I'm a graphic designer, or trying to be one with actual employment. Just had another rejection, actually. Mind if I take a look? Julian asked, gesturing to the empty cafe. Storm's keeping everyone away, and I could use the distraction. Something about his genuine interest made Naomi hand over her portfolio. She watched anxiously as he carefully turned each page, his expression thoughtful. These are exceptional, he said finally. Especially this branding concept. He pointed to her proposed redesign for a local bookstore. The way you've integrated the architectural elements of the building into the logo, that's inspired. Naomi felt her cheeks warm at the unexpected praise. Thanks. I'm trying to land something at Meridian Creative. They're supposed to be the best design firm in the city. A curious expression flickered across Julian's face. What interests you about Meridian specifically? Their philosophy. They believe design should serve community needs, not just corporate ones. She sipped her mocha, finding it perfectly balanced between bitter and sweet. Plus, they created that campaign for the downtown revitalization project that preserved all the historical buildings instead of demolishing them. The storm intensified outside, thunder rumbling overhead as customers began trickling in, shaking off umbrellas and stamping wet feet. Julian excused himself to serve them, leaving Naomi to work on her portfolio. Hours passed comfortably as she refined her designs, occasionally looking up to find Julian watching her with an unreadable expression. When the rain finally subsided, Naomi reluctantly packed up her things. Julian approached with a small paper bag. A cinnamon roll for later, he explained. And maybe stop by again? I enjoyed our conversation. I'd like that, Naomi replied, surprised by how much she meant it. Your cafe is lovely. It has its moments, Julian said with that dimpled smile, like today. As Naomi stepped outside into the fresh, rain-washed evening, she couldn't have known that Julian Hayes wasn't just a cafe owner. He was the founder and CEO of Meridian Creative, and her portfolio had just received its first unofficial interview. 2. Hidden identities. The morning light streamed through the cracked blinds of Naomi's apartment as she hunched over her laptop, coffee growing cold beside her. 2 weeks had passed since the storm that led her to Bittersweet Brews, and she'd returned almost daily, drawn as much by Julian's company as by the peaceful atmosphere perfect for working. Still obsessing over that application? Olivia appeared. In the doorway, her hospital scrubs wrinkled from a night shift. As a nurse, she kept odd hours that complemented Naomi's freelance schedule. Meridian posted another position yesterday, Naomi explained, scrolling through the listing. Senior Visual Identity Designer. It's perfect. Olivia collapsed onto their second-hand couch. Well, we got the notice. Rent's going up next month, 15%. Naomi's stomach twisted. 15? That's brutal, Olivia finished. My overtime barely covers my student loans as it is. I'll figure something out, Naomi promised, though uncertainty clouded her voice. Her freelance work had been sparse lately, clients scaling back amid economic concerns. Later that afternoon, the familiar bell of bittersweet brews welcomed Naomi as she pushed through the door. The cafe was quieter than usual, just a couple of students with textbooks spread across a corner table. There she is, Julian called, already preparing her usual, a caramel latte with an extra shot. Working on anything interesting today? Naomi settled at what had become her table near the window. Just tailoring my portfolio for another attempt at Meridian Creative. A shadow passed over Julian's face, so quickly she nearly missed it. You're really set on that place, huh? It's the dream job, she said, opening her laptop. But dreams don't pay rent, which is unfortunately increasing. Julian leaned against the counter, arms crossed. You know, I might have some connections in the industry. I could put in a word somewhere. Naomi looked up, surprised. Really? That would be amazing, but... She hesitated. Why would you do that for me? Because you're talented, he replied simply, and because good coffee and good conversation are surprisingly hard to find. I'd hate to lose either. Their eyes met and something unspoken passed between them before the cafe door opened, breaking the moment. A stylishly dressed woman in her 50s entered, her sharp gaze immediately finding Julian. There you are, she said briskly. The board meeting starts in 30 minutes, and Rosalind is threatening mutiny if you're late again. Julian straightened, his demeanor shifting, subtly. Penelope, I told you to call first. The woman, Penelope, raised an eyebrow. And miss seeing your little hobby in action? You know how I love watching you play barista. Naomi pretended absorption in her work, though curiosity prickled. Julian had never mentioned a board or business associates. Give me 5 minutes, Julian told Penelope before turning to Naomi. Sorry about this. Ezra will take care of you while I'm gone. As Julian disappeared into the back room, Penelope studied Naomi with undisguised interest. So you're the portfolio girl he mentioned. Naomi blinked. He mentioned me? Penelope's lips curved. More than mentioned, quite unusual for him. She extended a manicured hand. Penelope Hargrove, Chief Financial Officer at Meridian Creative, and Julian's very impatient business partner. The revelation hit Naomi like a physical blow. You work at Meridian? Then Julian is connected, Penelope finished smoothly. Very connected, though he prefers to keep his worlds separate. Before Naomi could process this information, Julian reappeared, transformed. Gone was the casual cafe owner, replaced by someone in a tailored suit that screamed executive authority. He shot Penelope an exasperated look. Ready? He asked, barely glancing at Naomi. As they left, Naomi sat stunned, pieces falling into place. Julian's insightful comments about her designs, his careful questions about Meridian, his offer of connections. That evening, an email appeared in her inbox. An interview request from Meridian Creative's HR department for the senior designer position. The sender copied on the email, jhayes@meridiancreative.com. Naomi stared at the screen, emotions churning between excitement and betrayal. The dream job interview had materialized, but at what cost to her pride? And who, exactly, was the man she'd been sharing her dreams with all this time? The revelation: the Meridian Creative headquarters occupied the top 3 floors of a renovated textile factory. Naomi's heels clicked against polished concrete as she followed a receptionist through the open-concept workspace. Designers huddled around large monitors, their animated discussions falling silent as she passed. Ms. Reed? A woman with silver-streaked hair approached. I'm Rosalind Weber, creative director. Your portfolio impressed us. Thank you, Naomi replied, fighting to keep her voice steady. Her eyes scanned the space for Julian, both dreading and anticipating their encounter. The interview room featured floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Rosalind gestured for Naomi to sit while explaining Meridian's approach to design and community engagement. Naomi responded thoughtfully, showcasing her knowledge of their projects, but her mind remained fixated on the revelation that awaited. "You seem distracted," Rosalind noted, studying her with shrewd eyes. "I apologize," Naomi said, squaring her shoulders. "I recently learned something unexpected about your CEO." Rosalind's expression softened slightly. "Ah, you've discovered Julian's double life." At Naomi's surprised look, she continued, "It's not exactly a secret within the company, though he doesn't advertise it." Before Naomi could respond, the door opened and Julian entered. Gone was the casual cafe owner, replaced by the polished executive she'd glimpsed briefly with Penelope. His eyes met hers, a flash of uncertainty crossing his features. "Ms. Reed," he greeted formally, extending his hand. "Julian Hayes, CEO of Meridian Creative." Naomi stood, accepting his handshake with cool professionalism. "Interesting. I thought you were Julian, owner of Bittersweet Brews." An uncomfortable silence filled the room until Rosalind cleared her throat. "I'll leave you two to continue the interview." With a meaningful glance at Julian, she departed. "Naomi, I can explain." "Explain what?" Naomi interrupted, anger rising. "That you've been playing some kind of game? Watching me struggle, listening to my dreams about working here, all while you could have helped from the beginning?" Julian sighed, running a hand through his hair, a familiar gesture now recontextualized. "It wasn't a game. The cafe isn't some hobby or social experiment. It was my first business before Meridian." "Then why the secrecy? Why not tell me who you were?" "Because people change when they know," he said, frustration evident. "Suddenly I'm not just Julian. I'm a connection, an opportunity, a stepping stone. The cafe is where I can just be normal." Naomi crossed her arms. "So you let me ramble about wanting to work for you, critiqued my portfolio while pretending to be just some cafe owner and what? Waited to see if I'd figure it out?" "I was going to tell you," Julian insisted. "But then I saw your work, and it was extraordinary. I wanted you to get this job on merit, not because we've become friends." "Friends don't lie to each other," Naomi said flatly. Julian's expression hardened slightly. "I never lied. I just didn't volunteer information that would have changed everything. Can you honestly say you would have treated me the same if you'd known?" The question caught her off guard. Would she have been as candid, as natural, as authentic if she'd known he held the key to her professional aspirations? "That's not the point," she said finally. "The point is, you had all the information, and I had none. That's an imbalance of power, and it feels manipulative." Julian moved to the window, shoulders tense. "You're right, I should have told you sooner. But Naomi, your application was already being considered before I ever met you. Rosalind had flagged your portfolio weeks ago." "Convenient timing," Naomi replied skeptically. "Check the timestamps on the internal communications," he challenged. "Your talent got you this interview. Our connection just accelerated the timeline." Naomi gathered her portfolio, emotions in turmoil. "Even if that's true, I can't work somewhere built on deception. I don't want special treatment or pity opportunities." "This isn't either of those things," Julian said, a hint of desperation creeping into his voice. "The position is yours if you want it, based entirely on your abilities. And if I don't want it?" She lifted her chin defiantly. "Then Bittersweet Brews still makes the best mocha in town," he said quietly. "No strings attached." Naomi headed for the door, pausing with her hand on the handle. "I need time to think." "Take all you need," Julian replied. "But Naomi, I'm sorry. Not for getting to know you, but for not being completely transparent." She left without responding, the weight of opportunity and betrayal battling within her as she walked past the curious eyes of potential colleagues, wondering if she was turning her back on a dream or protecting herself from a mistake. Reconciliation. Attempts 1 week after the disastrous interview, Naomi sat cross-legged on her apartment floor surrounded by job listings. Olivia hovered nearby, concern etched on her tired face. "So you're really not taking the Meridian job?" she asked, handing Naomi a mug of tea. "I haven't decided," Naomi admitted, accepting the steaming cup. "They've called twice asking for my decision. And the cafe guy, Julian, he's actually the CEO?" Naomi nodded, the familiar twist of confusion and hurt returning. Apparently running a cafe is his way of staying grounded. Rosalind, the creative director, emailed yesterday saying the position remains open, but they need an answer by Friday. "What's stopping you?" Olivia asked gently. "Pride?" "Partly," Naomi acknowledged. "But also, I don't know if I got this opportunity because of my work or because Julian and I—" She trailed off, unsure how to define what they'd shared over those coffeehouse conversations. Olivia sat beside her. "For what it's worth, I think you're overthinking this. Take the job, prove yourself, and decide about Julian later." The building's buzzer interrupted their conversation. Frowning, Naomi pressed the intercom. "Hello?" "Delivery for Naomi Reed," came the reply. Downstairs, a courier handed her a large, flat package. Back in her apartment, she unwrapped it to find an elegant wooden box containing art supplies, the professional grade set she'd mentioned coveting during one of her cafe visits. A simple note accompanied it. "Your talent deserves the best tools, no strings attached, Jay." "Well, that's definitely not subtle," Olivia remarked, examining the expensive brushes. Naomi closed the box, emotions churning. "I need some air." Without conscious intention, her feet carried her toward Bittersweet Brews. She stopped short at the sight of a closed for private event sign on the door. Through the window, she could see the cafe transformed for what appeared to be a birthday celebration. An elderly woman sat in a decorated chair, Julian kneeling beside her, his expression more open and affectionate than Naomi had ever seen. As she turned to leave, a voice called out, "Are you going to lurk there all evening? Or would you like to come in?" The elderly woman stood at the now open door, appraising Naomi with sharp eyes that somehow reminded her of Julian. "I didn't mean to intrude," Naomi stammered. "I was just—" "You must be Naomi," the woman interrupted. "I'm Eleanor. Hayes. It's my 75th birthday and my grandson is being absolutely boring about it. Please come save me from family small talk." Before Naomi could protest, Eleanor hooked her arm and pulled her inside with surprising strength. Julian looked up from arranging plates, his expression freezing when he spotted Naomi. "Grandmother," he began. "Julian tells me you're a brilliant designer," Eleanor continued, ignoring him. "Did he also tell you I owned this building long before he put a cafe or his fancy company in it?" Naomi shook her head, allowing herself to be guided to a table. "Sit," Eleanor commanded. "Julian, bring us coffee and then make yourself scarce." Once, Julian reluctantly departed, Eleanor leaned forward. "My grandson is many things, stubborn, perfectionist, occasionally misguided, but dishonest isn't one of them." "He misled me," Naomi countered softly. "Did he?" Eleanor's eyebrows rose. "Or did he simply allow you to know the part of himself most people never see?" She gestured around the cafe. "Julian built Meridian into what it is today, but this place, this is his heart. He started it when he was 22, using money. I loaned him after his parents disowned him for abandoning the family law practice." Naomi's perception shifted slightly. "He never mentioned that." "He wouldn't," Eleanor said dryly. "Julian compartmentalizes. The cafe lets him remember where he started, who he is beneath the executive suits. The only people who get to see both sides are those who matter." Julian returned with their coffees, his movements stiff. "Grandmother, I'm sure Naomi didn't come to hear family history." "Actually," Naomi said, meeting his eyes directly, "I find it illuminating." Something vulnerable flickered across Julian's face. "Naomi, about the art supplies." "Thank you for those," she interrupted. "They're beautiful. Just like the work you'll create with them," he replied quietly. Eleanor watched their exchange with unconcealed interest. "Julian, be a dear and check if Thomas needs help with the cake." Once alone again, Eleanor took Naomi's hand. Whatever you decide about the job, understand this. My grandson may run a company and a cafe, but until you walked in during that storm, I've never seen him truly torn between his two worlds. That says something significant, don't you think? The celebration continued around them, but Naomi remained lost in thought, watching Julian interact with his family, seeing beyond both the cafe owner and the CEO to the man caught between identities, seeking authentic connection in a world where motives were rarely pure. Later, as she prepared to leave, Julian walked her to the door. I never meant to complicate your professional opportunities, he said softly. I know, Naomi replied, understanding dawning slowly. Your grandmother is quite persuasive. Julian smiled ruefully. A family trait I apparently failed to inherit. I wouldn't say that, Naomi said, surprising herself. Your coffee did convince me to come back after all. It wasn't forgiveness, not completely, but it was a beginning. New beginnings. The Meridian creative office hummed with energy as Naomi guided her team through the final adjustments to their presentation. 3 months had passed since she'd accepted the position on her own terms. No special treatment, no reporting directly to Julian, just the opportunity to prove herself based solely on merit. How's the community garden branding coming along? Rosalind asked, pausing beside Naomi's workstation. We're finalizing it now, Naomi replied, gesturing to the screens where her team refined a logo for an urban renewal project. The neighborhood council loves the direction. Rosalind nodded approvingly. You've exceeded expectations, Naomi. The senior position suits you. After Rosalind departed, Thomas, a junior designer on Naomi's team, leaned over. Is it true you turned down the job initially because you didn't know the CEO was the same guy who owns Bittersweet Brews? Naomi smiled. Office gossip traveled fast. Something like that. Bold move, Thomas said admiringly. Most people would have jumped at the connection. Most connections aren't worth compromising your integrity, Naomi replied, though her stance had softened considerably since those first turbulent days. At 6:00, Naomi packed up her things and headed downstairs. Instead of turning toward the subway, she walked the familiar path to Bittersweet Brews. The evening crowd had thinned, leaving just a few regulars scattered among the mismatched furniture. Julian looked up from behind the counter, his professional facade replaced by the cafe owner she'd first met. Perfect timing, he called. I was just about to test a new blend. Care to be my guinea pig? Depends, Naomi countered, settling onto a bar stool. Is this a CEO directive or a barista request? Julian laughed, the sound warming the space between them. Strictly barista territory. The CEO is officially off duty. Their relationship had evolved cautiously over the past months. Professional respect at Meridian, gradual rebuilding of trust at the cafe. Separate worlds with a carefully maintained boundary that both understood was slowly dissolving. How was your day? Julian asked, preparing her coffee with practiced movements. Productive, Naomi replied. The garden project is coming together beautifully. And yours? Board meeting ran long, he admitted. Budget season. But Penelope finally approved the expanded internship program you suggested. Naomi took a sip of the experimental blend, considering its complex notes. This is good, though it needs something. A hint of cinnamon, maybe? Julian nodded thoughtfully. Always the designer, refining everything you touch. Speaking of design, Naomi said, reaching into her bag, I brought something for you. She handed him a slim portfolio. Inside were concept sketches for an expansion of Bittersweet Brews, a redesigned space that honored its original character while creating a communal workspace for creative professionals. Julian studied the drawings, expression unreadable. You did this? Just ideas, Naomi said, suddenly uncertain. Eleanor mentioned you've been considering expanding the cafe, and I thought, it's perfect, Julian interrupted, his finger tracing the central seating area she'd designed. You've captured exactly what I've been trying to articulate. I've spent enough time here to understand what makes it special. she replied softly. Julian set down the portfolio, meeting her eyes directly. Naomi, I've been meaning to ask you something. If it's about reporting directly to you at Meridian, my answer's still no, she said with a gentle smile. Nothing to do with Meridian, he assured her. It's about a collaboration, here, at the Café. A monthly gathering for local designers to share ideas, network, build community. No corporate agenda, just creative people supporting each other. Would you help me organize it? The proposal represented something significant. A merging of their separate worlds on neutral ground. That sounds wonderful, Naomi said, warmth spreading through her chest. Though I have conditions. Julian raised an eyebrow. I'm listening. Complete transparency going forward, she stated firmly. No more compartmentalizing. And I want to feature Eleanor's artwork in the first showcase. She showed me her paintings when I visited last weekend. You've been spending time with my grandmother? Julian asked, surprise evident. Naomi shrugged. She invited me for tea. It's not my fault she's more forthcoming about your childhood embarrassments than you are. Julian groaned, but his eyes crinkled with affection. I should never have introduced you two. As evening deepened outside the cafe windows, they outlined plans for the design collective, their conversation flowing seamlessly between professional ideas and personal revelations. The boundaries between cafe owner and CEO, between designer and potential romantic interest, blurred into something honest and unexpectedly beautiful. Later, as they locked up the cafe together, a new routine they'd fallen into, Julian paused beneath the gently swinging bittersweet brews sign. You know, he said thoughtfully, I never expected that storm to change everything. Naomi took his hand, their fingers intertwining naturally. Sometimes we need a little turbulence to find shelter in unexpected places. Or in unexpected people, Julian added softly. The cafe stood quiet between them, no longer just a business or a refuge, but a beginning. Like the best designs, their story had evolved from rough concept to polished reality, each revision revealing something truer than before. Two people with separate worlds now creating a shared one, founded on creativity, honesty, and the perfect blend of bitter and sweet.